You are nothing to me anymore. Never step foot in this house again. I was shouted at by my father, and supported by John, my soon-to-be husband. I left my family home in tears. It was right after I graduated from high school. My name is Amy. I'm a 36-year-old farmer. This year marks 18 years since I left my family home. From now on, the time I spend living my own chosen life will be longer than the time I spent in my family home. And this thought makes me quite sentimental. My family home was in a city. My father was a corporate worker, and my mother was a stay-at-home mom. We were a family of 4, including my brother and me, who was born a year ahead of me. My parents were the kind of people who ranked their children clearly, so my brother, being the heir, was always given priority. The quality of our meals and the grandeur of our birthday presents were always superior for my brother. He boasted about his superiority and always bullied me. There were times when I felt lonely, and there were times when I cried out, "I want attention too!" But my parents never changed, so I gave up completely. The event that changed my life happened in the summer of my second year of high school. My brother was studying for a college entrance exam, aiming for a top-tier university. His mock exam results were not good at all, so he was always on edge, taking out his frustration on me at every opportunity. My parents, as if handling a fragile object, treated my brother with utmost care and gave me household chores that didn't allow me to have time to study. Because I was performing better academically than my brother, they tried to lower my grades to improve my brother's mood. It didn't make any sense. At that time, I heard about a rural experience program from a teacher. At the high school I was attending, students could participate in a 2-night, 3-day rural experience program if they wished. Participants stay at a host farm, harvest vegetables, cook together, and experience country life. I, who was troubled by my family environment, decided to participate bravely. But my father objected, saying, "Agriculture is something only fools who can't get corporate jobs do for a living." And my mother scoffed at me, saying, "Are you crazy? Willingly experiencing manual labor? Getting dirty and stinky in the mud?" But I defied my parents' opposition and used the pocket money I had saved up to sign up. This was the first time I had ever refused to do as my parents said. It turned out to be an excellent decision. For me, who was starving for familial love, it was truly a wonderful experience. Working in the fresh, rural air was invigorating, and I was able to experience the warmth of a family. The eldest son of that family, John, was a year older than me and the same age as my brother. At first, I was a bit wary, simply because he was an older guy. But John was completely different from my brother. He was kind, but firm, got along well with his parents, and was kind to me as well. John's parents were truly gentle people, and even though it was only for 3 days, I cried a lot when I had to leave the farm. John's mom cried along with me, saying, "You're welcome back anytime." I promised, I will definitely come back. They said they didn't look at their cell phones much, so I wrote them letters regularly. Before long, I started receiving more replies from John, and it became like an exchange diary, and we started dating. It was a pure long-distance relationship, without even a kiss. After my brother failed to get into his first-choice university, and ended up in a third-rate private college, I became a college applicant. But my parents pressured me to get a job instead of going to college. The reason, they said, was that women didn't need an education. But the real reason was probably that they didn't want me to go to a better college than my brother. Since the rural experience, I had a dream of becoming a farmer. I could become a farmer without going to college. But John was a college student and had moved to the city. So I thought I would go to college and aim for a new kind of farming. Having a clear goal and purpose, I studied hard every day, despite interference from my parents and brother. However, when I passed the university entrance examination, my father was furious, saying, "Are you, a woman, planning to go to a better university than your brother?" My mother also said, "We don't have money to spend on you. Your brother needs money, so you should work and bring money home." I was desolate by my parents' words, and after a huge fight, I ended up cutting off all ties with them. John came to pick me up from home, and his parents, now my in-laws, supported my college expenses, and I ended up attending college. 4 years later, I married John. I never contacted my parents or brother during my college years, but when my in-laws said, "We have to at least give them a heads up about the marriage," we visited my childhood home for the first time in 4 years. Right after graduation, things were chaotic, and it was also planting season, so we couldn't make the visit until the beginning of summer. My in-laws, my husband, and I all had sunburnt, darkened faces from working outside, but my parents and brother openly ridiculed us. My mother asked, "No offense, but how old are you exactly? You must be quite poor to be working until you're all dark like this." I was mortified. "Please, stop, Mom," I implored in a small voice. But she ignored me. My brother smirked and said, "Smart people like me make money with intellectual work. If you can only do primitive work, it's proof you're unintelligent." I turned pale, and the gentle smiles on my in-laws' faces froze. My husband firmly declared, "With all due respect, we are proud to be farmers." My father laughed condescendingly and said to me, "Just to make it clear, you're a stranger to us from now on. You're marrying a poor farmer who has to sweat and work hard. We're going to treat you as if you don't exist. It'll be a problem if you come asking us for money. We don't want to see you anymore." Already being disowned at 18, I knew very well that I was on my own, even without being told so explicitly again. Still, I had tried to maintain the courtesies. The sympathetic looks from my in-laws and John were difficult to bear. On the way home, I quietly wept and resolved to forget about my biological family. Time flew, and before I knew it, 18 years had passed. The emotional wounds had thoroughly healed. I had given birth to 2 children, and my days were busy but fulfilling. Although I had virtually erased the memories of my parents and my brother, I was informed by a cousin that my brother was getting married. My cousin and I have always been close, and we occasionally touched base even after my marriage. At some point, I had sent them rice harvested from our farm, and they were pleased with its taste, even becoming a regular purchaser. Therefore, we maintained a relationship, and we enjoyed chatting on the phone about once a month. "We can meet after a long time at the wedding," my cousin said, but I hadn't heard anything about the marriage from my parents or my brother. Well, since we're estranged, it's true that there's no way for me to know. "I heard they are building a new duplex. I wonder if it's completed." Apparently, both my parents and my brother and his wife planned to move after the wedding. My cousin knew about the estrangement between my parents and me, but they seemed to think that I would attend weddings and funerals. After finishing the phone call with my cousin, impulsively, I dialed my mother's cell phone number. However, I was met with an automated message saying, "This number is no longer in use." I tried calling my father next, and again, the same automated message. Had they changed their cell phone numbers? I didn't know my brother's number, so I couldn't call him. With trembling fingers, I dialed the landline for my family home, and it connected. My heart pounding, I waited for someone to pick up. "Hello?" It was my brother who answered. "Brother? It's Amy. I heard you're getting married and moving." I hesitated over what to say next, about to offer congratulations when I was cut off by my brother. "There's no need for you to do anything. You, a farmer, are a stranger to me. Don't call me." My brother just yelled and hung up the phone. I rushed to call him back, only to find that I was already blocked. This was harsh. No matter how much he hated me, we were still family. It hurt to be rejected like this. Seeing my distress, my husband was concerned and gently asked, "What's wrong? Did something happen?" I couldn't hold back my tears any longer. When I told him about the conversation, both my husband and my in-laws were as furious as if it had happened to them. "Your home is here, Amy. Your family is us here," my mother-in-law reassured me. Her words moved me to tears. I wish she was my real mom. She cared about me much more than my blood-related mother did. My father-in-law also comforted me, saying, "You're happy now. That's all that matters. No need to get hurt. The one who laughs is the winner." My husband added, "Let's take them as a bad example and make sure we don't turn out like that." Even our children, not knowing the situation, hugged me tightly. Thank you, everyone. I felt a warmth in my heart, realizing how happy I was now, even though I wasn't blessed with a supportive biological family. However, things took a drastic turn when my business was featured on national television. My in-laws were originally large-scale grain farmers in the American Midwest. They also grew a wide variety of vegetables and fruits, but a lot of produce didn't meet the standards. I had studied food business in college and spent a lot of time figuring out how to sell all the produce without any waste. I started an online business selling jams, juices, and pickles made from slightly damaged fruits and vegetables that couldn't be sold as they were. Backed by the local farmers union, my business was a huge success. It was a hit with moms who wanted to feed their children safe, domestically produced food, and seniors who wanted to taste nostalgic homemade pickles. I built up the company with young women who, like me, had married into farming families and unemployed young people. It had grown into a $5 million business. Our success story was covered in an in-depth report. After the TV broadcast, we received a lot of attention and calls from various people. In addition to orders and inquiries, there were calls for business transactions and interview requests. Both the company's phone and my personal smartphone wouldn't stop ringing. So when a call came in from an unknown number, I picked it up without thinking. But surprisingly, it was my brother. I suppose he's seen the national television as well. He must have heard about my success. Barely exchanging greetings, he said, "I'm thinking of starting a business. Can you lend me some money?" Excuse me? My answer to that would be no. I felt a strong aversion and coldly rejected his request before hanging up. Then he called again. "Stop arguing and give me the money. If a woman like you can start a business and make money, I'm bound to be successful," my brother incessantly screams. That's not how someone who wants to borrow money should behave, and I wonder where he gets that confidence. It's funny, because it was my brother who said that I, a simple farmer, was a total stranger to him. I didn't respond to my brother, but instead I asked something that had been on my mind for a while. "Hey, who decided not to tell me about the move?" "Huh? Of course, it was me. My wife, she's a city girl. The moment I mentioned you, she said we should cut ties." So, that's how it was. I didn't want to hear more, so I hung up and blocked his number. I realized that my brother's wife, whom I never met, seemed to have the same character as my brother and my parents. The fact that my brother saw me on TV might mean that my parents saw it too. A few hours later, when I thought I was getting another call from an unknown number, it turned out to be my father. "Why are you the boss? Did you steal a man's job?" he demanded. I answered, "Well, both John and my father-in-law are involved in the farming business, so it's only natural." In reality, it's called large-scale consolidation, and it's become advantageous to incorporate if you're a somewhat large farm. My father-in-law is the president of the local agricultural association, and John has incorporated his in-law's share and is the president of that corporation. Maybe my explanation convinced him, because then he said, "You're distant. Why didn't you contact us?" I was dumbfounded inside and responded, "It was you who disowned me. I'm hanging up now." And I hung up and blocked his number. A few minutes later, I got a call from my mother. "Why aren't you giving your brother money? You're making $500 million a year, aren't you? Send money home. We're your real family. Have you forgotten all the favors we've done for you, raising you up? At least give us $300 million. Or at least $250 million. My mother was the most aggressive of all. Even though the business makes $500 million, that's total revenue. After paying for expenses and employee salaries, I barely have any left over. I exaggerated a bit, and my mother instantly retorted, "You're lying! There's no way that's true!" I was getting irritated. My mother persistently demanded money, but I wondered if she wasn't embarrassed. "I'm not going to send money, whether I have it or not. We're strangers," I said, then hung up and blocked her number, of course. I thought that was the end, but I was wrong. My parents and my brother's wife, who I'd never seen before, showed up uninvited at my in-laws' house. My father said, "Hey Amy, you want to hear the surprise? I'm revoking the disownment." I was stunned at how desperate they were for money. My mother-in-law asked, "What on earth is going on with you people?" Expressing their discomfort. Even my father-in-law and mother-in-law were glaring at my parents in silence, and the employees around had gathered, looking at my parents with stunned faces. My brother must know he is not welcome here either. "Huh? The real blood-connected family is us. We have the right to get the money you earn too." The woman who seemed to be my brother's wife nodded in agreement with his words. I was furious. "I don't think so. Even though we had a blood connection, there was no emotional connection at all. You treated me like a stranger and abandoned me." The emotional scars from being abandoned by my biological family were revived, and I was on the verge of tears again. At that moment, John came and stood next to me. "Amy is now a part of our family. Even without you disowning her, we are perfectly happy. Please go home." He defended me and declared firmly. The employees also criticized my parents in unison. "Exactly! What are you thinking? How rude." There are many people on my side here. When I thought this is where I belong, I felt profoundly happy. My brother began to get angry. "Shut up! Shut up, you country bumpkins! You're all low-educated trash, aren't you? Obey what we say in silence," he ranted. Then John replied, "Well, both I and my father are Ivy League graduates, and Amy has graduated from a well-known university for agriculture," casually revealing our educational background. "What? Despite being graduates of top universities, why are you farming?" my brother yelled in surprise. Perhaps for my brother, who graduated from a low-ranking university, the title of university graduate was his only pride, and he probably didn't expect to lose in terms of educational background. With a cool face, John said, "Farming is a respectable profession. We can fully utilize what we've studied in college." I couldn't help but burst into laughter at that scene. Brother, you've lost to John in everything. I managed to laugh and somehow felt relieved. Maybe I was too afraid of my brother and parents. Let me say this clearly one last time. We are already strangers. I stopped speaking for a moment, deliberately changing to a polite tone. "So I can't lend or give money to strangers. Please leave. If you make a fuss or act violently, I'll call the police and take legal action." I declared our severance clearly. My in-laws and husband subtly came closer to me to protect me from harm by my parents and brother. I was deeply moved, feeling truly cherished. The employees also shouted at my parents, "Get out of here! Go home!" My parents, my brother, and my sister-in-law glared at us with resentment, but they couldn't say anything more and could only retreat. Afterward, according to a story I heard from my cousin, my brother and parents tried to get rich quick and started a business with debts instead of borrowing money from me, but their arrogant character led to a big failure. Now, they seem to be on the verge of bankruptcy. But I'm a stranger now, and I have no intention of getting involved anymore. As for me, my work is going well, and I'm surrounded by a true family of respectable in-laws, a loving husband, and adorable children. I will cherish each day while savoring the happiness of life.
What do you mean? I was supposed to shine brightest on this day, yet my expression was strained. Why would you say something like that now? My mother came rushing in as soon as she heard my voice. It was just before my wedding. Despite being in a dressing room, it was not the place for raised voices, but I was at my wits' end. My name is Emily. I am a 28-year-old employee. My father is a somewhat well-known business owner in our hometown, and I was able to graduate from college without any financial difficulties. However, my parents were always strict about the value of money, so I never wasted any. Since high school, I didn't receive any allowance and worked part-time. My local friends sometimes called me a down-to-earth lady, even though I was supposedly well off. But the truth is, I never thought of myself as such. During work, I saw a familiar face at a client's. It was my senior whom I liked in high school. His name is Tyler. He was popular for his good looks and because he was a member of the soccer team. I was the manager of the team and we used to talk a lot, but Tyler, 2 years my senior, retired that summer. Our contact faded away and he graduated. Could it be Emily? Tyler recognized me and called out. That brought back a flood of memories. He was as handsome as ever, and his suited-up look was strikingly different from before. After dating for a year triggered by that encounter, I got an official proposal from Tyler. I was ecstatic to prepare for our wedding. But Tyler would just say, "Do as you like, Emily," leaving everything to me. I was a bit displeased, thinking maybe he didn't care about the wedding. But since he told me to do as I liked, I decided to do just that. When we went to view the wedding venues, Tyler seemed somewhat restless. I didn't pry then, but it later turned into a big issue. After viewing several venues, I expressed my preference, but then Tyler surprisingly stated, "I think this one is better." It was the first venue we visited, the one where Tyler was acting uneasy. It was a beautiful hotel with great food, so we decided on that venue. Tyler, who seemed to have no interest in the wedding, suddenly started actively participating in the planning. "When I saw the venue, I got motivated," Tyler said without me even asking. Our assigned wedding planner was a woman named Palma, who was the same age as Tyler. Her overly friendly demeanor bothered me. I wanted to keep the wedding preparations within our budget, but Tyler agreed with whatever Palmer suggested, and before I knew it, we had gone over budget. There was a dress I desperately wanted to wear, and I wanted to allocate the budget for that, but it seemed impossible. When I talked to Taylor about it, he said, "Just ask your parents to pay for it, Emily. They'd surely help out with that." But I wanted to avoid that. I didn't want to throw a wedding that was beyond our means by relying on my parents for expenses. When I came back from a restroom break during the meeting, it appeared Tyler had mentioned this to Palmer, and she insisted I needed that dress. "It's a once-in-a-lifetime event. You'll regret it if you don't wear what you want, even if it means going over budget." I understood her point, but her overly friendly manner and tone that seemed more like a friend than a planner irritated me, and I refused her suggestion. When I tried on a dress within our budget, I surprisingly liked it on me. If we were to spend more money, I thought we should spend it on the guests instead. I came to terms with this myself. When I tried on the dress, Grieve, who was in charge, said something that bothered me. "Do you know Palmer?" When I denied knowing her, I thought Grieve seemed troubled. But I was so excited about my first wedding dress, I couldn't dwell on it. One day, when we were about to go for a wedding meeting, Tyler said he couldn't make it due to sudden work. Reluctantly, I went alone. Then, instead of the usual Palmer, Grieve showed up. Palmer had taken an unexpected leave and Grieve was filling in. I found it easier to talk to Grieve. I took this opportunity to say that I wanted to change the plan recommended by Palmer, and Grieve agreed after hearing me out. I managed to choose the dress I had always wanted while staying within our budget and returned home in a great satisfaction. The next night, I received a call from Tyler. "You went ahead and changed the wedding plan on your own, didn't you?" His voice was lower than usual. "Palmer wasn't at the meeting yesterday, so Grieve took over. When I told her my wish, she changed it for me. Yesterday, Tyler was busy with overtime work, so I couldn't call him. I sent an email saying that I wanted to talk about the change in the plan and the details when we had time, but Tyler seemed unhappy. Was it because I changed the plan without consulting him? Or was it because I reported it late? I am sorry I changed it without asking, but wasn't this the original plan? Tyler, you just went with what Palmer suggested, but you said you'd leave it to me in the first place." "That's rude to Palmer, who went out of her way to make the suggestion." Tyler's anger wasn't about the plan. It was about being rude to Palmer. Why was he defending the coordinator so much? "Tyler, do you prioritize Palmer's suggestions over my feelings?" When I asked more directly, Tyler sighed heavily. "Fine, I'll apologize to Palmer." With that, he hung up. What was that about? Why did it turn out this way? I was troubled, but I didn't want to ruin the wedding. So I apologized to Tyler the next day. I didn't know exactly what I was apologizing for, but I said, "I am sorry about yesterday." Tyler responded tersely, "Yeah, it's fine. I've already apologized to Palmer." Hearing that name again irked me, but getting angry now would defeat the purpose of my apology. I swallowed my feelings. Then Tyler suddenly changed his tone and began to speak. By the way, about our new home." "Huh? New home? Aren't we moving into your company's apartment? We planned to register our marriage a month after the wedding on my birthday. Since we could move into Tyler's company's apartment, we thought it would be cheaper and decided to move after the registration." Despite that, Tyler shook his head. "I thought about it, and living surrounded by my co-workers might be uncomfortable for you, Emily. I hadn't really thought about it, but my time at home was limited since I was also working. We had discussed maybe moving in the future, but for now our current place would do, or so we'd agreed." And then, out of nowhere, Tyler dropped a bombshell. "Hey, what if we ask your father-in-law to give us some land? And we build a house there. I'm sure he'd do at least that much for his darling daughter, right? We can put it in my name, so it'd be better if we register our marriage first, wouldn't it? That way, once we're married, we can start right away." Hold on, what? I remember thinking during our wedding preparations that Tyler was relying too much on my parents' wealth. It was time for me to put my foot down. I've told you before, I don't want a life where we depend on my parents, and asking them to give us land is completely unreasonable. Both my mom and dad are very strict about money. There is no way they'd just hand it over. Surprised by my response, Tyler lost his momentum. "I see. With a sullen expression, Tyler fell silent. Even though there was a sense of unease between us, the wedding day arrived. Until now, Tyler might have had the idea to lean on my parents because he was still single, but I believed that getting married would make him feel more grown up and responsible. With that in mind, we went ahead with the wedding. As I entered the waiting room, only Palmer was there to greet me. As soon as she saw Tyler, she left the room. Tyler followed her out. Watching this, one of the staff members in the room seemed to sigh. Despite the uneasiness, I tried to keep a smile on my face, determined to make this the best day of my life. Despite that, Grieve, one of the staff members present, said something unthinkable to me. "Your life is over, you know." "Excuse me?" When I asked her what she meant, Grieve gave me a stem look and she said, "Are you sure you want to marry that man?" "What do you mean?" These weren't the kind of words you'd expect to hear from a wedding venue staff member. As I stood there confused, Grieve continued. "If you don't mind me saying so, that man is cheating on you." The other staff members looked away, not understanding what was happening. On the verge of tears, I shouted out, "Why are you saying this now?" My voice echoed down the corridor. My mom hurried into the waiting room. She tried to calm me down, while Grieve, too, apologized and tried to get me to sit down. Finally, Grieve broke the news. I was certain after seeing Palmer's behavior earlier. Tyler is having an affair with Palmer. I turned pale. My mother simply said, "I see." Her tone suggested she knew something. When I urged her to talk, she revealed that she had seen a man who looked like Tyler embracing a woman in another waiting room. She had gotten lost and accidentally peered into another room. She couldn't see their faces, so she didn't know who they were, and because she was in a hurry, she closed the door quietly and pretended she hadn't seen anything. She thought the man had a similar build to Tyler, but she had dismissed the thought that it could be him. The woman was wearing a black suit, and she assumed she was a hotel employee. When I described what Tyler was wearing today, my mother nodded. When Grieve asked my mother for more details, it became clear from the description of the hair and height that the woman was Palmer. My anger exploded. I was about to shout, but Grieve stopped me. "Why are you stopping me?" "Please hold on, the staff will be back soon." The staff member, who'd left a short while ago, walks back in. Mrs. Grieve takes her mobile phone from the returning staffer and brings it over to me. On the screen, I see both Tyler and Mrs. Palmer. I can hear their conversation too. "Once we are married, I get the land to build a house. If I play my cards right, they might build a house too. Then, immediate divorce." Tyler declares, chuckling. Next, a voice I assume is Mrs. Palmer's. "Tyler, you're such a scoundrel. If it weren't for me, he would have been happy with her." The two of them laughing together. From their conversation, it seemed Mrs. Palmer was Tyler's ex-girlfriend. She wasn't at the high school, so she might have been his college classmate. Apparently, they met again during the venue inspection and got carried away with the idea that it was destiny. When wealthy and handsome men come for venue inspections, she gets close to them, has affairs, and causes breakups. According to Mrs. Grieve, who heard their conversation, Mrs. Palmer is a groom hunter. However, she always gets away with it because there is never any proof. Mrs. Grieve had noticed her behavior with Taylor and warned me about they might be having an affair. "You could have put it more gently," I say cautiously. She immediately responds with an apologetic, I'm so sorry. She had been at a loss for how to broach the subject, then blurted out, "Your life is over," as time was running out to catch them in the act. I take a deep breath and say, "Is it okay if I end his life?" I was going to bring Tyler's life to an end. After I finished changing, Tyler came in. "Isn't it beautiful? I want you to take a picture," I say. Tyler, smiling, takes out his phone and snaps a picture. "Let me see," I request, taking the phone from his hand. At that moment, Mrs. Grieve takes Tyler away to touch up his makeup. I start to search Tyler's phone for evidence of his affair. There are plenty of photos and exchanged messages. I never touched Tyler's phone, so he must have been careless. There was no passcode, and I might not have found the evidence if not for this situation. I screenshot the incriminating conversations and to transfer them to my phone. When Tyler comes back and I hand him his phone, Mrs. Palmer finally shows up. Other staff members had been keeping Mrs. Palmer busy. She had caused many grooms to call off their weddings and resented by nearly all the staff who lost their sales because of her. Tyler must have switched to Palmer's plan to support her sales. I guess he thought he could always beg my family for more money if he ran out. Thanks to the teamwork of the staff present, I was able to gather evidence of the affair. And then the reception begins. The next item on the agenda was to play the How the Bride and Groom Met movie. As the movie begins, Tyler yells out, "Hey, what the hell is this?" The screen displayed footage of him and Mrs. Palmer in a different room, acting intimately. All these were evidences of his infidelity, captured by me in screenshots. A furious yet pale-faced Tyler. I saw Palmer trying to leave the venue, but she was stopped by Grieve and her staff. The hall buzzed with commotion, Tyler's college mates looking at the pair with scornful eyes. I took the microphone. "Given the circumstances, I must apologize. Everyone will return the gift cards from the party. Please enjoy the food and treat this as a dinner party." I glared at Tyler. "So, you were after my family's money all along, huh? What's this about rekindling with an ex-girlfriend who works at the venue? Isn't it odd to speak of destiny when you're the groom and she's the staff? The red thread of the fate is supposed to be severed, right?" As I said this, I was met with applause of agreement from the audience. "I'm glad we didn't complete our registration. You were about to tarnish my family register. I'm satisfied just being able to wear this dress and take pictures. I will sue you for compensation in the divorce trial for your affair, as well as the wedding expenses." Unsurprisingly, the wedding was cancelled. I returned the gift cards to my invitees. My disgruntled father, who had witnessed everything, arranged for a lawyer, and I went hard after Tyler. He had to pay every penny for his cheating, for breaking off the engagement, and for the wedding expenses. And not just Tyler, but Palmer too. After a while, I received an apology from Tyler. It was a momentary lapse in judgment. I realized that I truly love you, Emily. Please, let's reconcile. How dare he say such a thing? People like you are bound to cheat again due to such lapses. You don't love me, you love my family's money. Well, after the hefty compensation from the divorce trial, I'm fairly wealthy now. At this, Tyler's face turned red with anger. You are a failure as a wife if you can't forgive a single lapse. Seems like that was his punchline. Well, I'm not your wife, so call me a failure or whatever you like. Laughing, I hung up the phone. Word about Tyler and Palmer spread among our classmates. It even reached their bosses and co-workers, and they had to quit their jobs. They sent me emails full of their misery, but I blocked them. Palmer abused her position to use a groom's contact information for personal use. She was sued for damages by her employer, and I sued her for compensation. She lost her job and had to work at a grocery store, looking completely exhausted. This is what I heard when Grieve came to apologize. As for me, I immersed myself in work. Work is enjoyable, but now I'm looking forward to joining a marriage party to find someone I can truly marry.